Hello students, we're back again with another chapter and another MCQ. I hope you are enjoying and it is helping you for your studies, the MCQ, the way we are preparing you. So this is for the chapter number 5 from the book Snapshot for class 11th, and the name of the chapter is the Mother's Day. It's basically focused on to provide information and to make us understand how ladies in our home or family, the wives and mother, help. So the first MCQ, what makes Doris astounded as soon as she enters the house? The sight of her mother not being there, the sight of her mother smoking, or because the tea was not ready, or none of the above. So, children, when Doris enters the house, he's astounded. And you know what was the reason? You have to choose one of these options. Because Doris saw her mother smoking. She never used to smoke earlier. So the sight of her mother smoking is the right answer. Let's go to the next question. According to Mrs. Pearson, where Cyril had been wasting his time and money, races, ice shows, both at races and ice shows or in clubbing. So in this chapter, Mrs. Pearson thought or said that Cyril had been wasting his time and money as well. So the option for this we have seen. So the correct answer for this is both at races and ice shows. Next question. What is the first thing that Doris does as soon as she enters the house? Ask her mother to give her tea. Ask her mother to iron her yellow silk. Ask her mother to cook something for her, or ask her mother about her day. So, the moment Doris enters the house, he says, "Mother, please iron yellow silk." So that is the correct option. Doris asks her mother to iron her yellow silk. How would you describe Mrs. Pearson? Considerate, dominating, or compliant, or both considerate and compliant? Answer is both considerate and compliant. Let's go to the next question. Where was Doris headed for the night? She had to work overtime. She was going out with Charlie Spence. She was going for her friend's birthday, or she had some appointment. So the correct answer for this, children, is she was going out with Charlie Spence. That's a part of the plot. How does the author describe Mrs. Fitzgerald? Sinister looking, has a deep voice, worried looking, or both sinister with a deep voice? So answer for this, children, is author described Mrs. Fitzgerald as both sinister with a deep voice. Next question. What does the play Mother Day talk about? Status of the family in the society, status of the children in the family, status of the mother in the family, or status of the father in the family. And children, the chapter name itself, Mother's Day, has mother, name in it. So we can easily guess what could be the option. So it is the status of the mother in the family, the right answer. Let's go to the next question. The attitude of Mrs. Pearson's family changes towards her comment. Not clear from the story? Maybe, no, or yes. The answer for this is yes. Let's go to the next question. When do Mrs. Pearson and Mrs. Fitzgerald get back to their original selves? when they get both get bored, or when Mrs. Pearson's family gets to know about them, or when the situation goes out of hand, or none of the options. So children, so Mrs. Pearson and Mrs. Fitzgerald, what they were acting and putting an act together, when did they went back to their original selves, the way they were earlier? So they did that when the situation goes out of hand. That means जब हाथ से बात निकलने वाली होती है, परेशानी ज़्यादा भरने वाली होती है, घर वाले उनके बिहेवियर से बहुत ज़्यादा परेशान हो सकते हैं और सिचुएशन कंट्रोलेबल नहीं होती है, then they get back to their original selves. So when the situation goes out of hand. Next question. It's wonderful having a real dash, you have to fill in the blanks, living next door. Having a real chef living next door, having a real doctor living next door, having a real writer living next door, or having a real fortune teller living next door. So we know in the story the neighbor was a fortune teller, so having a real fortune teller living next door. Next question. How does Mrs. Pearson describe her family members? Mindful, pleasant and helpful, thoughtless and selfish, or hardworking? So we know, children, when we read this chapter, Mrs. Pearson's family, they were actually very selfish and thoughtless. They never cared about, family members in the home. So the answer is thoughtless and selfish. Next question. What does Mrs. Pearson suggest them to do for that night? So the question was, what does Mrs. Pearson suggest them to do for that night? Getting the supper ready, or a game of rummy, for a family game of rummy, or both, for a family game of rummy or getting the supper ready? So answer is both, family game of rummy and to get supper ready. Let's go to the next question. Who is the writer of the play Mother's Day? A.J. Cornyn, Patrick Pringle, William Wordsworth, or J.B. Presley? An answer for this is J.B. Presley. How does Mrs. Fitzgerald plan to help Mrs. Pearson? By listening to Mrs. Pearson's rants, by talking to Mrs. Pearson's family, by swapping personalities with Mrs. Pearson, or option both A and B? So children, in this chapter, Mrs. Fitzgerald plan to help Mrs. Pearson was that Mrs. Pearson should start acting in a different way like Mrs. Fitzgerald. So the correct answer for this is by swapping personalities with Mrs. Pearson. Next question. What are the changes that Mrs. Pearson referred to Cyril? Change in the way she is treated by the family, changes related to her work, changes in her daily routine, or none of the above, or none of these options. So children, the correct answer for this is when the changes were referred by Mrs. Pearson, it was nothing else but the changes in the way her family started treating her. So changes in the way she is treated by the family. Next question. Mrs. Pearson tells George that he is being called names at the club, laughed upon at the club, or respected at the club, or both, laughed upon at the club and also called names at the club. So correct answer for this, children, is both, laughed upon and called names at the club. Well, she's suddenly all different. Who said this and for whom? Cyril for Doris, George for Doris, Cyril for her mother, or Doris for her mother? And the correct answer for this, children, is Doris for her mother. Next question. Where did Mrs. Fitzgerald learn to tell the future? In the West, or from the West, or it is not mentioned in the play, or from the Middle East or the East? Well, we all know the East, or the countries towards China side, are into all this telling the future, fortune telling, this the card game, which called when you go to people and they pull out the card and tell your future and fortune. So similarly, Mrs. Fitzgerald learns to tell future from the East. Next question. Mrs. Pearson's family had been dash towards Mrs. Pearson. That means they had been respectful towards Mrs. Pearson, polite towards Mrs. Pearson, or unappreciative towards Mrs. Pearson, or biased towards Mrs. Pearson. For children, the answer for this is unappreciative. They did not appreciate Mrs. Pearson at all. Mrs. Fitzgerald is maid of the Mrs. Pearson, or neighbor of Mrs. Pearson, relative of Mrs. Pearson, or none of the above. The answer is Mrs. Fitzgerald was neighbor. Fortune teller in the beginning we had neighbor of Mrs. Pearson. How does the author describe George Pearson? Fittyish, solemn, pompous, or all of the above? So children, we know George Pearson was 50-ish, around 50 years old, solemn and pompous as well. So all of the above. Next question. Why was Doris red-eyed? Because of crying, because she was getting ready to head out, because of a fight, or because of an infection? It is an important MCQ, children. So remember, Doris got red-eyed because of crying. बहुत रो रहे थे, and that's why. Next question. It's that silly old bag from next door, Mrs. Fitzgerald. Who said this? George, Doris, Mrs. Pearson, or Cyril? And children, it is an important MCQ. Remember, Cyril said that. Next question. Buck teeth and half-witted. Who has been described here? George Pearson, Mrs. Fitzgerald, Cyril Pearson, or Charlie Spence? So we know in the chapter, Charlie Spence had buck teeth and half-witted character. So it is Charlie Spence. Next question. What message does the author of Mother's Day try to convey? To respect everyone, to spend time with family, to work hard for your mother, or to appreciate wives and mothers for their work? So children, it is a very important message, and our author wants to convey on this lesson. So we should always appreciate, mothers at home, our wives at home. Although you're too small to have wives, but at least you should always appreciate your mothers for their work they do at home. They do a lot of stuff for you. They wash clothes, they cook food, they clean the house, and they manage everything in the home. So you should be appreciated towards them. Next question. In what endeavor does Mrs. Fitzgerald help Mrs. Pearson? To run errands, to see future, to make her family treat her well, or none of the options? Well, it is clear she makes her family treat her well. Next question. What was George's reaction when he saw his wife drinking stout during daytime? He accompanied her, he did not mind, he ignored her, or he did not like it? Well, actually, in the chapter, George did not like it at all. So answer is he did not like it. Next question. Mrs. Pearson was dash about Mrs. Fitzgerald's plan. Envious, excited, hesitant, or sure? So Mrs. Pearson initially was not so sure. So it was hesitant about Mrs. Fitzgerald's plan. Let's go to the next one. What does George mean when he says we are at 6 and 7 here, in a state of confusion and disorder, in the middle of taking a decision, in the middle of a conflict, or in a state of agony? So normally when we say we are at 6 and 7, it's basically in a state of confusion and disorder. Next question, and this is the last MCQ, children. I hope you're enjoying this video and the quizzes which I have posted in the description. Please do subscribe to this channel, and also don't forget to alert icon you need to, so that whenever a new video is posted you get alerted for that. So The last MCQ is Mrs. Fitzgerald asked Mrs. Pearson to be polite with her family, ignorant, rude, or firm. So here, Mrs. Fitzgerald advises Mrs. Pearson to be firm with her family, be firm with your family to get appreciation. And thank you. I hope you liked the videos. Keep on liking it. Thank you. Bye-bye.